I'm all right. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm okay. Just got my head shaved. We're in lockdown again, and it's like if trying to picture what I would look like after a month and a half with Ramadan coming up. So it's like, no, let's shave it right down enough.
I've been meaning to ask, how come you don't grow a beard?
I'm not really a beard kind of guy. I used to be. But no,
That's
it's when you're in your 60s, it's like how much can I simplify my appearance so that it doesn't take any time out of my life.
well, but if you grew a nice full beard and if it came in white, you could make everybody think you're Santa Claus.
I suppose so. I don't. I think Santa Claus is probably the furthest that anybody would think when thinking about Dave Sim. So are we recording or?
We are recording, yes.
Okay, all right. So how was the birthday cake?
Good, good. We still have some left, and I'm probably gonna have to eat it tonight.
Oh, that's too bad.
Yeah, it's a horrible reality that I went from getting one birthday cake a year to getting to eat 4 birthday cakes a year because I'm married with 2 kids.
No kidding. No kidding. That's got a lot to recommend it right there.
If you like birthday cake.
Okay, let's start. Let's start with Jeff Seiler's first question.
Messages in your mailbox. First saved message.
Hey Dave, it's Jeff. So, mid-program, my cat climbed up on the TV table and somehow, I have no effing idea how he did it, turned off the program. So I'm going to take this moment of silence to call you and leave you my question for next month. And it goes as this. Quote, as you are an industry insider, and I use insider in quotes, why do you think or know that Marvel and maybe DC, etc., cut off the corners and sometimes the tops of their original art paper? The recent artist's editions, or as in the case of Walt Simonson, the Mighty Thor, Artisan edition, show these trends. I don't recall you ever doing that. So why do they do that? Just curious. So there you go. All right. Hope you're doing well, and I will talk to you soon. Bye.
End of
About the original artwork, and as a how did he put it? Comics insider, and I think I could hear the quotation marks in his voice from here. Yeah, I'm a comics insider, but I'm not a Marvel and DC insider, and I noticed the same thing, that there are original pages where they've lopped off the corner of the page, and my best theory, and it is just a theory, you'd have to ask somebody from the time period, is that Marvel and DC, that was how they would designate that this page was supposed to be returned to the artist. Since I don't know how many people know this, that Marvel and at least DC Comics used to shred their artwork because that was their best legal advice at the time from their legal department. Was if you don't shred this artwork, it's in danger of getting out there and being reproduced illegally. So we will keep that from happening by shredding everybody's artwork. I think one of the first jobs that Marv Wolfman or Len Wein or both of them had at DC was taking the paper cutter to original artwork, which was, of course, excruciating for them as comic fans, and they got into the habit of chopping up the artwork at least in between the panels, and then talking DC into making the amputated panels into bonus items that they would give to people on the tours of DC, which was where Marv and Len, as far as I know, first came to the attention of DC. Was they had a tour every week, and Marv and Len, being the comic book fans that they were and DC fans that they were, used to come every week, and it was like, these guys are going to show up any week anyway. We might as well put them to work. And the only other thing that I would add to that original art story is it's just come to light since Murphy Anderson died a few years back, I think 2016 or 17, that a lot of his artwork was showing up in the Heritage Auctions catalog as part of the Murphy Anderson collection. And that was when I inferred the fact that Murphy Anderson had a special deal at DC where he got all of his artwork back at a time when DC wasn't doing that. Like I say, I think the cutting the corners off of the artwork was a way of indicating this page is not supposed to get shredded, or this cover isn't supposed to get shredded. This is supposed to go back to the artist, where I think DC got to the point where they went, if you really want a page for a specific reason, or if you want a cover for a specific reason, as long as you don't come around too often asking for that, we'll try and be good-natured about it and give it back to you. So Murphy Anderson, coming out of newspaper strips, he was, I think, either the last or second last artist on Buck Rogers when he moved over from newspaper strips to comic books permanently. I think that was part of his contract with DC. I get all of my artwork back. And that has turned out to be a very, very cagey decision on Murphy's part, that his family is now doing very well out of all of the artwork having been consigned to Heritage Auctions. I think the first thing that they auctioned was the first Zatanna story from Hawkman number, I'm not sure I know the exact number. Number 4, it's one of the early ones anyway. But that went for a very, very nice piece of change. But if Jeff, you're inclined to do it, try and find some of the guys that were working back in the 1960s, 1970s, who are still alive, and ask them about it. And that's my best theory on it. Could be something else entirely.
I know that there's a couple Justice Society of America stories that got cut up and given away to fans that did the tour or wrote letters, and they were cut so that it's a vertical strip of panels, or no, a horizontal strip of panels, so you get like 3 panels, but you don't get enough to figure out the story. And they actually Tomorrow's Publications did a JSA book, and they got fans that had the panels that kept them, brought them in, and they scanned it, and they found one of the stories, and they have, I think, all of it.
Wow.
And it's an unpublished story it was superheroes died, and this was sitting in the can, and they went, well, let's just get rid of it, and they stripped it up. And so because there's like 4 or 5 missing stories, and 2 of them they have.
Right. Yeah. Before that, or around the same time, Julie Schwartz actually started giving artwork away. I know that Don and Maggie Thompson got some absolutely amazing pieces of artwork that if you happen to have a letter printed in that issue, I think it was a way of Julie Schwartz trying to get more letters coming in. But at the same time, this late in the day, it's going like, well, why don't you give away your own artwork, Julie? Like, what are you doing giving away Murphy Anderson pages? And and Carmen Infantino pages. But that was also the guys at the time period. I think it was considered unsophisticated to actually want your art back. You were supposed to be at least sophisticated enough to know how completely unimportant comic book art was. Some comic strip art was considered important and valuable, but somebody thinking that their artwork was valuable was just considered a swell-headed individual, and everybody tried to keep that part suppressed, which is really unfortunate. But it's one of those things that time and distance tells you, well, no, these covers that these guys were supposed to be sort of semi-ashamed of, because they weren't top flight illustrators. They were just working in superhero comics. I mean, they're going for $100,000, $200,000. So
I posted on Tuesday that if somebody really loved me, they'd buy me page 2 of issue 8 of Amazing Spider-Man, because the original art's up for auction, and I think the opening bid is $38,000.
Yes. I do look forward to those platinum catalogs coming in from Heritage Auctions. What have they got this time that actually made the platinum listing? I lend them to Alfonso at Studio Comics Press when I'm done looking at them, and he knows he's not going to get much work done that day, because same thing I do. All tools down. The Heritage Auction catalogs came in. Yeah, actually, that's the auctions tomorrow.
Yeah.
The other question, Jeff Seiler being Jeff Seiler, he gets 2 questions a month. Everybody else just gets one question a month. And he was asking about, I got Rolly to email it to you, so you can actually play Jeff's phone message right now, and then I will answer his question.
First saved message.
Hey Dave, it's Jeff. Because I'm too lazy to actually type it in at Amok or Matt's email address or whatever, here's my another question for April. Here's what I wrote. Well, I suppose that it was bound to come eventually. Ken Burns has a new documentary premiering on April 5th for 3 nights, probably about 6 hours, on Ernest Hemingway.
3, 4. Okay, so 20 years later on, what do I have to say about Ernest Hemingway in light of the fact that the Ken Burns, and he is definitely in the documentary world, the Ken Burns is doing his Ernest Hemingway documentary. And I would have to say that I'm not surprised that Hemingway's sexuality hasn't become more of an issue than it has, because I think people were very, very protective of Papa's masculine facade, extreme masculine facade. I dug out my copy of The Garden of Eden, which the back flap for the hardcover. Hemingway began The Garden of Eden in 1946 and worked on it off and on for the next 15 years, like until his death. During the same period, he was writing The Old Man and the Sea, Movable Feast, Dangerous Summer, and Islands in the Stream. He described the book's theme as, quote, the happiness of the garden that a man must lose, unquote. Here, Hemingway's interpretation of love and art is darkly profound. His imagination is keenly alive, his writing masterly. The Garden of Eden, published 25 years after the author's death, is a provocative and astonishingly modern work, which is all tiptoeing carefully around the fact that, how would I put this? If we ever do get to the point, or if the Hemingway scholars ever do get to the point of going, no, seriously, what was Ernest Hemingway's sexuality? I think we would have to add at least 3 more letters to LGBTQ 2 plus, and I'm not being sarcastic there, and I don't think I'm being provocative. It's I think the Hemingway scholars have been remiss in not addressing the fact that there is definitely serious psychological business at work here. I think one of the reasons that he worked on Garden of Eden for 15 years was that as he was trying to convey an autobiographical perception of his own sexuality, he would get to what he was trying to say and then would go, well, I can't say that. That makes it sound like I'm a homosexual. Which, well, it's a reason it makes you sound like you're a homosexual, because if you weren't a homosexual, you were in a strange borderline category, which is why if this was Dave Sim's ideal world of Dave Sim, you're the one who is going to decide how the Ernest Hemingway scholarship is going to go from here. My best recommendation would be take a lesbian, a gay, a bisexual, a queer, and a transsexual, and give them all of the drafts, which, from my understanding, is a fair pile of paper at the JFK Library in Massachusetts, and let them read all of it, and then sit down and discuss, okay, was he one of us or was he one of you? I think that would be not only an interesting discussion, but it would probably make a great 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 volume series of Ernest Hemingway's Garden of Eden and the ongoing debate about what was his sexuality. And I'll just leave it at that.
Okay.
It is going back 20 years. I'm not a right up to speed Hemingway scholar these days, but that's definitely my impression that what needs to be discussed about Ernest Hemingway needs to be discussed by people who are in all of those categories to decide what is it that he was saying here and what is it that that was the nature of his sexuality. It'll be interesting to read the reviews of Ken Burns' documentary and see how careful is he being about it, and if he's not being careful enough, are the Hemingway scholars going to tear him a new one, as they say?